Go ahead and put your headphones on. I think everything's on.
Can you hear me? I can hear me. Good. What's the matter, Nick? You can't hear me?
No, I can hear you.
Check.
Okay. Can you hear yourself?
Yep.
Alrighty. Make sure my hat is straight. It looks like it is. Oh, this is going to be good. Let me adjust that a little bit.
Hey, Michael. Can I get a bottle of water from you?
Is it okay to have a Starbucks cup here? Or?
Yeah, that is taboo, man. It's taboo.
Well, make sure you get paid.
We're not the of the affinity where you have to hide the logo because to me it's just free advertisement for them. They're going to get all upset about that. So unless we're saying something bad about them. But.
Starbucks political point of view, they may.
They're liberal as anything. Yeah. I tell people all the time, if you're going to boycott for a bigger reason than them just being liberal. I can understand. Was it Miller or was it Bud Light?
Bud Light, yeah.
I can understand why you boycott Bud Light. Like that's just dumb. Like to hire Dylan Mulvaney as the spokesperson for a good old boy brand, redneck. Like that was just the dumbest marketing decision. I mean, that whole marketing team needed to be fired.
Yeah, they betrayed their marketplace.
Yeah,
Starbucks didn't betray. They
kind of catered
born and
to
bred,
that,
like
fit well with their market. But
right.
Yeah. Do you want to start whenever we start? Do you want to read his article?
Are we going to read that? Sure.
I figured it'd be a good little starting point to read the article.
You don't have to read it all. I mean,
no, I'm not.
Are we rolling, Mike? Yeah. Welcome to Nick's Right Podcast, where Nick is always right. Old millennial.
Gen X.
Sorry. Maybe I should just keep doing it the way I'm doing it. I just got a little aggravated. Well, I got aggravated whenever I was trying to do my spiel, and you would always interrupt me, Gen X. And I just like, oh my gosh, let me just.
Well, that's why I did it.
Oh, so now that I'm not doing it, you're not going to do it?
No, I'll still do it. I'd rather aggravate you about it.
I'm sure you would.
It doesn't have to be that way,
SOB. All right. We have a special guest today. Let's go ahead and get to our sponsors, and then we'll get straight to our reading of an article that brought on our special guest. I'm pretty excited about this one. Let's see. Patriot Mobile, patriotmobile.com/NRP. Good news. We are finally officially getting paid from Patriot Mobile. Like finally, I know, right? I know. I'm really
landmark.
Excited. It's a stepping stone. So we're just going to build from there. And by the way, to our audience, I would not promote Patriot Mobile unless I knew it was a good product. And it's not because they're conservative and Christian. That's just a bonus. They're actually the best service out there, and they're using the current services that you already have, but you get a higher importance on the cell towers. So yes, go to patriotmobile.com, put in the code NRP for Nick's Right Podcast for a free month, or just go to patriotmobile.com/NRP. And then also the headphones that we're wearing, Livv Audio, Livv Audio.com, not L-I-V-E, Livv Audio.com. Put in the code NRP for a 15% discount. These are premium headphones, so you can do Bluetooth or you can wire in. Last but not least, we have merch. Christ is King. We just put up a shirt that says 100% not Muslim. And I'm loving that shirt.
I did. Yeah.
We're gonna put up another shirt that says 100% not liberal. I'm pretty sure that one will fly off the shelf as soon as it goes live.
Yeah, I didn't wear my Deus Volt hat today, but we do have a Deus Volt line of hoodies, t-shirts, hats. Deus Volt is the Christian battle cry that they charged into against during the first Crusades, that they charged into against the Islamic hordes and repelled them out of Europe. So Deus Volt, baby.
Nick, are you not wearing your glasses because of what we talked about earlier?
No. I knew you were going to bring that up, dude. Okay. What did you tell me to do?
Okay, you're reading. All right. I just want to make sure. I saw the glasses off, and I'm like, what the heck's going on? So if you go to nicksrightpodcastmerch.com, you'll be able to see our Shopify store and see all the different stuff that we had available. All this does is help fund us to continue to do what we're doing. So thank you guys for your support. We just hit 160,000 followers on Instagram, and we finally surpassed the Muslim girl who has been responding to us and throwing a lot of shade our way. So I'm just glad that we now have a bigger audience than her, because it proves that, more people would rather be Christian and conservative than than Muslim and liberal. Anyway, we're going to pray, then we're going to get started. Lord Jesus, thank you for this time. Thank you for this ability to come here and have free speech. Thank you for the country that we live in that offers us that free speech. We ask that no one would see us. They would only see you and your love shining through. And let us have fun. And may we have a lot of viral moments. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 I'm going to let Nick go ahead and start reading this.
I hadn't planned on reading.
I know
anything.
you didn't. You were reading so well in the car, and I was like, this is going to be a good start. So,
well, furthermore, I don't know how much you want me to read.
Well, no, hang on. Don't say his name yet. Just read, and then we'll introduce him.
Maybe just the opening, yeah.
All right. Go
Sentenced in 2023 to 3 years and 10 months in federal prison. Woohoo! Followed by 3 years of supervised release. In 2014, no names, he took a $20,000 bribe from Benjamin Burris, a dentist, in exchange for introducing a bill to change Arkansas's dentistry laws, which probably need to be changed if they're. I mean, dentists have a really high suicide rate, as far as I understand. Over the next 3 years, took more than $150,000 in payments from Burris. Blah blah blah, according to the document. Also, campaign funds were spent on jewelry, vacation, groceries, and a gym. Boy, I mean, this is stuff I've never heard of before. Like, this never happens, right? In a separate case, he pleaded guilty in 2019 to accepting thousands of dollars in bribes to help a health nonprofit, blah, blah, blah. And wasn't there some tax evasion going on, which...
All I know, which this is something you haven't said yet, but it's right at the beginning. It says, President Donald Trump's recent string of pardons for prominent white-collar criminals. So in other words, our guest, Jeremy Hutchinson, who was a state senator for Arkansas, has received the golden ticket of presidential pardons.
Presidential pardons.
Yeah, that's how they said it.
I was expecting you to read.
No, see, this is I kind of got thrown at me. Which
I wanted to paint a picture. Okay,
paint a picture. Yeah, which, by the way,
that's not a fair picture.
It's not. Yeah,
well,
exactly.
The picture I wanted to paint is that you're a Republican, right?
Correct.
You're conservative, and you were the DOJ under the Biden administration was weaponized against you.
Yeah, and I think. Let me just say, my uncle was governor at the time of Arkansas.
Okay.
And, but they came after me, I think. I mean, I can't divine their motivations, but all evidence would suggest that they came after me to try to get my uncle and other high-profile Republicans who I had.
And Arkansas is a Republican state. Like, it's a red state.
Very much so now. That's a recent phenomenon, but yes.
So
now it certainly is.
Donald Trump doesn't give out presidential pardons just to anyone, and he gave you one. And I think that's the key point that you can take away from this very liberally written article, because they were throwing shade at you.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to spend this whole time talking about my case, but I mean, these individuals that alleged to bribe me, I was a lawyer. The part-time Senate legislature in Arkansas is a part-time gig. And so you have to have a real job. And I was a lawyer, and these were clients of mine. And they didn't pay me money. They paid their invoices for legal services.
Oh.
And then I voted against them a lot. And other clients, like, I'd do an appeal for them. I'd send them the invoice, and then I'd vote against them on some liquor bill or something, and they send an email back. Fat chance I'm paying that, and it's inevitable you're going to have conflicts when you're making the laws and also a lawyer. So I did a few very small things that I would do for anybody, and the feds came and said, "Wow, that's a bribe," even though I had said no to them.
Yeah.
I said no to those same clients on numerous occasions.
Yeah, that's the impression I'm always immediately under when I read stuff like this that comes from a left-leaning rag, and maybe right-leaning rags do it too. I don't know, but when they talk about throwing money around and this amount and that amount and whatever else, I don't trust it. I don't trust where all of that money is originating from, that the article is saying that it's originating from. Like, you call it professional services. They're calling it bribery. You never,
Well, I would say in Congress, where you're a full-time member of Congress and you have a salary that is commensurate with a full-time job. If you're getting money from outside sources, it may not, but it may be suspect. But in Arkansas, in Texas, in most states, California is an exception, but most states, the legislature, the founders of the state constitutions, whether it be Texas or Arkansas, valued a citizen legislator who had to work in the community and then have to live under the regulations and laws that they imposed on others. And there is a value to that. But the downside is you're part of the economy. I mean, you're out there, whether you're selling cars or you're a bank president or you're
a lawyer,
you're going to have clients, depositors, customers who are also your constituents. And so there's a natural, it's not a conflict, but it's certainly a tension. And they could prosecute any legislator they wanted if that's the definition. Now, I will say, after spending a year in prison, the United States Supreme Court came down and completely obliterated that theory that the prosecutors had been using across the country, not just with me. And so the law now, thanks to the United States Supreme Court, is far better and far more protective of state and local officials. But there's me and thousands of others who, maybe not thousands, but certainly hundreds of others who...
More than there should be.
More than there should be.
Yeah.
And so I was in prison, saw the Supreme Court case come down, and I didn't just see it. I managed to listen to the oral arguments. I was very enthralled with how this case was going to turn out. And I filed a 2255 motion basically attacking the conviction based on a new interpretation of the law. And even the government would admit that there was never a quid pro quo, that I followed all the Senate ethics rules. I did what the Senate ethics guidelines told me to do. And but I sat there for a year after I filed that case, still in prison.
Wow.
And the court hadn't even taken up a motion to compel discovery, much less get to the merits of the. And mercifully, President Trump stepped in and issued me a pardon, or I'd probably still be there waiting for the court to hear my case.
So would you say that this golden pardon, as they're calling it, from Trump is really just Trump pushing the state of Arkansas to do their job?
Well, I think it's pushing the federal prosecutors, of which he was a victim as well, and knows very well how they can. They have enormous powers, far more than any human should have, quite frankly. Far more powers than the president has to affect people's lives. And he was a victim of that. And I think he's very sensitive to other people who may be caught up in the over abusive prosecutions, and certainly weaponization that occurred in the prior administration.
Yeah, it happens a lot. I'm sure. You just mentioned thousands, hundreds, if not thousands of cases where this kind of thing happened, but I followed the Dinesh D'Souza case from a couple of years ago. Yeah, Dinesh D'Souza was, if you don't know,
I know.
He was like a talking head for the right movement, right?
Yeah, no, I know.
And they accused him. They accused him of setting up bribery. I think a bribe.
No, I don't know the facts well, so I shouldn't say definitively. But my understanding was that it was a campaign contribution violation, that he was bundling money to contribute, which I don't know if he did or didn't, but I do know they could go after hundreds of thousands of people but they chose him, and
because they didn't agree with him, is
right?
What it is.
And he again, I don't know if he did or if he didn't do it, but that's not why they prosecuted him. It had nothing to do with his guilt or innocence. It had to do with his political persuasion.
Which would you say the same of your case? Do you think they came after you and your dad and whomever else? What other high-profile politicians, because they were on the other side and presented this opportunity?
I think it was partial. Yeah, I think there was certainly, I was Republican, but I think it was more so big fish. My uncle, not me. I wasn't the big fish, but they saw an avenue to get a governor, and whether that be, some of the career prosecutors, I don't think care. Now, Maine justice in Washington was very political, and that may have filtered down. I'm not sure, but what I do know is career prosecutors love to be able to hang on the wall. I got the governor, and that's how you get promoted. That's how you get moved to D.C. And
so they just saw you as a stepping stone to the governor. At that time for Arkansas.
And then when I I didn't lie. I mean, my uncle is a saint. He's a great guy. But they wanted me to essentially lie and make up. There's an old saying. You've probably heard, they want you to sing.
Oh, sure.
Well, Alan Dershowitz, who's a Harvard law professor, he wrote in the foreword of a book. He said the government also oftentimes doesn't want you to sing; they want you to compose.
Meaning, according to the metaphor, create, make the stuff up.
And when I didn't do that, again, not because I was trying to protect them, because there wasn't anything there and I wasn't going to lie, they got upset with me and gave me an 8-year sentence.
That was my next question. I was going to ask how long you were sentenced to, and then you spent, what, 2 years?
25 months, so 2 years.
A little over 2 years.
A month.
Wow.
Went in on May 1st of 2023, and President Trump pardoned me on May 28th of 2025. But my warden wouldn't let me leave, even though I was
completely pardoned.
Yeah.
Presidential pardon.
He said, I get to keep you for 24 hours, and I'm going to take all of it. And
wow. So he didn't like you that much.
He didn't know me until I got a pardon. I mean, I kept a very low profile.
Was he a liberal? Like he just saw a presidential pardon come through, and he's like, I'm going to...
He hated Trump, for sure.
I don't get that.
And then he hated us. He hated inmates. Not me specifically, but just the entire class of inmates. He was, most of the people I encountered, wardens or correctional officers, they were doing a job, and there was a natural tension between us. Yeah. But they were fine. They were just incompetent, perhaps lazy.
Yeah.
But they weren't sadistic.
Yeah.
This one individual was
very
sadistic. Now, to the credit of our current Bureau of Prisons that President Trump appointed, he's no longer with the Bureau of Prisons.
Go Trump, baby.
They're getting rid of a lot of the bad apples, though.
So let me get this straight. If I can get down to the bottom of this, and I know you want to talk about other things, but are you basically saying that this was allegedly all fabricated to try to pin you up against a wall to make up something about your uncle?
Well, I fabricated maybe they interpreted a statute that in such an expansive way that, I mean, I pled guilty because I was threatened with 25 years.
So you took a plea deal.
Yeah. And I had fought for a year and went through all my savings, went through all my wife's savings. My dad was going through his savings, and then I was confronted with 25 years, and I just couldn't be away from my wife that long. I mean, and I thought the maximum was going to be 5 years, and they played some tricks and ended up getting me for 8 years. But I pled guilty, and I could honestly say I was guilty based on that interpretation.
Yeah, sure.
It's just that interpretation is absurd and should never exist. And the Supreme Court a year later agreed. But in that moment, I said, if this is the law, I'm guilty. I just can't believe that this is how courts and prosecutors have interpreted this statute. But if that's your interpretation, I mean, I took money. It was for legal services. And I performed legal services and invoice, and they wrote a check. There wasn't like some under the table thing. I disclosed them on all my documents, filed all over the state, representing them as a lawyer. It was.
I'm kind of curious. Wouldn't they have to, if they're going to accuse somebody of a crime, you in this particular case, wouldn't they have to prove there's a victim? Like every crime has a victim.
No. That's so quaint.
Is it quaint?
I mean, that's and I went to law school, and I learned all these things in law school, these mens rea, which there has to be a state of mind where you intend to commit a crime, and there has to be knowingly commit a crime, and there has to be, victims, and
None of that
matters in the federal system, and it's some of the work that I'm doing now is trying to reimpose some of those old quaint notions that have been long forgotten. But no, there was no victim.
Well, there's a notion now that there's a justice system for, one group of people, and then there's a justice system for
another group.
Yeah.
I don't know if I believe that. I mean, there is to a degree, but there's also, I'll say this, at the state level, and I used to be a state prosecutor. I think that's true because state prosecutors, by the way, Texas, we can get to it later, but Texas is like the gold standard for criminal justice reform in the country.
Really?
Yeah.
Didn't know that. Proud to be a Texan.
Going back to Governor Rick Perry is when it began, and we can talk about it, but Texas should be proud. But states, prosecutors have a limited budget. They have a limited staff. They can't do every case. They have to be selective. And they run through cases, thousands a month probably. But and so they just plea them out. When I was a prosecutor, the public defenders would joke, our job is to greet them, meet them, and plead them. And they would literally, if you couldn't hire your own lawyer and got a public defender, you walked in, met your lawyer for the first time, and then 5 minutes later, we're signing a plea agreement. And so at the state level, I think that may be true. At the federal level, they have unlimited money. They have unlimited time. They love white collar, big fish. Now they mistreat. I served time with a lot of drug offenders, and the abuses with them are enormous as well. But I don't think it's any worse than the abuses that they impose on more white collar people.
When you say abuses, you're talking about the judicial system and the way they treat their people.
The way they, they have so much leverage and so much power and so much unlimited resources, and they can bankrupt you. They can threaten you with 25 years. They can threaten to go after your wife or your spouse. They can threaten additional charges. They can indict you in multiple districts, making you fine. Their resources and the power is unlimited. They've got the United States government behind them, and it's terrifying. But it's terrifying if you're Bernie Madoff and have billions. Well, they may have taken all that, but if you're the richest person, if you're Elon Musk and you get indicted, he's in just as much jeopardy as a street, drug dealer.
Do you think that's whatever the definition of just is? Do you think that's just?
I don't think Scripture would call it just. And I've done a deep dive. Started while I was in prison, but continued since I got out about what a Christian's perspective on justice should be, particularly criminal justice. And I think we as a Christian nation and we as a church are falling very short in honoring God's view of problem solving, peacemaking, and criminal justice. I think the current system where we rip dads away from kids because prisons are needed. There's some really bad. I met some guys who I hope never get out. They're.
I'd like to hear more about that here in a minute, but go ahead. Go ahead.
There's people who need to be in prison for the safety of the community, and that's a different story. But I'm talking about drug offenders. Most of them are addicted themselves and are just trying to survive and find enough money to feed their own habit, or white collar people who, some of them are swindlers, some of them are, but a lot of them, like me, did not know they were committing. If they committed a crime, they certainly weren't aware of it. And there's a book, I don't want to terrify your viewers, but there's a book called 3 Felonies a Day. And it's written by a Harvard law professor, Harvey Silverglate. And the premise of the book is that the average white collar worker commits 3 felonies every single day that they're not even aware of.
Really?
Because there's, I don't know the exact number, but around 350,000 federal criminal violations on the books. And the prosecutors have an infinite number of ways of interpreting those statutes. Yeah. And I mean, for instance, did you know that you can't take a cat on the Colorado River? Criminal.
That's a felony?
Felony.
Yeah. It's interesting. When I was a little boy, I read a book, Uncommon Laws or something like that, and they were ridiculous. Like taking a cat on the Colorado River, you can't whistle at a woman underwater. You can't, like, you know, and some of them I believe, like, you can't carry a pair of wire cutters in your back pocket because people used to cut, you know, people's barbed wire. Mm-hmm. But yeah,
you can't piss in a national forest. How many of us men have violated that?
Yeah, I know. We're all guilty.
On a hike.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
But, and I may be going too long on this topic, but it is interesting to me. There's you all are probably familiar with him, an old Roman emperor named Caligula.
Sure.
Who was known mostly for his debauchery, just a sexual deviant. But he also was also extremely cruel. And he got kicks out of writing new edicts, and he'd write them on issuing new edicts, and then he'd write them on parchment in very small font, and then hang him like 30 feet high on top of pillars so that his citizens couldn't read him. And then he'd laugh, and as he decapitated some unknowing citizen who didn't know that they were. And what Caligula did by intent, I'm afraid America has done by negligence or just lack of care, or Congress has delegated way too much authority to the bureaucracy who's written a lot of different reasons. But the net result is the same. We have citizens who have no idea what the laws are and are walking blind through life, and most of them will never become a target, and most of them will never be. But God forbid if you become a target, they will find something because I mean, when Donald Trump, when they started looking into Donald Trump, I'm like, they're going to get him. He signed a bank loan. He's filed taxes. Mm-hmm. He's been in the world of commerce. They'll find something, and they twisted around and stretched it and managed to find something and got a conviction.
Wow. Well, they didn't get a fair conviction.
No, it wasn't fair. But it was.
Yeah, I think that was all planned. You know, just because even the banks were saying no one was swindled here. Like, no victims here. We made money. Like there's no reason
like, we'll
why.
do business with them again.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense. But of course, that comes back to what I was saying. Like, there's a justice system for the higher ups, and then there's a justice system for everybody else. So, and that's what I was getting at. What you just kind of described. Like, they have an unlimited number of resources, yet the common man doesn't.
No, absolutely. It's one-sided. If there's another quaint notion, you're presumed innocent
until proven guilty. And I've kind of paraphrased that, and I said you're presumed innocent until bankrupt, and that
is the
truth. More you say, the more I get terrified. Just because I'm like, wow, like they could literally construe to anything we do or haven't done. And
well, that's why I really want conservatives to, and President Trump has brought attention to this issue, but we as conservatives ought to be the biggest champions for reining in this out of control government. Mm-hmm. And we're not.
No, we're infighting.
Well, we're infighting, and we're also, at least historically, we've been the ones saying, let's build more prisons and let's lock them up and throw away the key and be tough on crime. And I get all that. I mean, there's some merit there, but it's the net result of that. We look around and like, this is not what God wants. I don't think God doesn't want a nonviolent dad to be ripped away from his children for 10 years because he's got an addiction problem. Yeah. He needs rehab. But instead he leaves his kids as orphans. Satan sees young children without a father and rubs his hands with glee. Mm-hmm. I got two easy targets now.
Oh man, that's an interesting way of looking at it. Yeah, we do disparage certain communities as fatherless a lot. And
I met a lot of guys who and you wouldn't expect it from them. I mean, tough guys, drug dealers, and they would, I'd find them weeping in their cell because they missed their phone call with their kids, and they desperately desired to be a father and couldn't, not in a real sense. And again, there are people who need to be locked up, and I'm not saying, but
sounds like we need to be not just tough on crime, but tough on true crime. Like it actually needs to be proven that this is a true crime where we need to be tough on.
Well, the violent people, and some liberal jurisdictions are letting them out without bond.
Oh yeah,
I mean that's crazy.
I just covered that the guy who killed the Ukrainian girl on the train or the bus. Like I just covered that. They just let him out.
They did.
That's what I covered.
I mean, after he murdered,
he pleaded insanity. So in other words, I don't think he's getting any kind of prison sentence. Yeah.
Well, that's what's frustrating. There's so many guys who are extremely violent who should be in prison. They're not. And then I met, and I don't want to be a victim. I thought I was a victim when I went to prison, and then I met so many guys, and I was like, I got off easy. I mean, some of these guys' stories are just unbelievably heartbreaking. And
but what's the point? What's the point of them trying to? And you saying it's tough on crime, but is it just because they want to pad their own success numbers, like as lawyers or as prosecutors? Like, what's the point of just sending people to jail that don't deserve that kind of sentence?
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, he would say it iniquity.
Well, I think there's I'll say this. I said I went through the scripture and I've asked preachers challenge my theology, and as of yet, nobody's done it, but that's not to say it's infallible. But what I found interesting, the Old Testament was a pretty strict.
Oh, yeah.
But God, he did not establish prisons or jails.
I've heard this before.
The only jails or prisons were in pagan societies, the Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Annanites. You go through the God's people never had prisons. And now you could be executed for certain crimes, but if you stole, you didn't get sent away from your family. You didn't get sent away from the community. You stayed right there, being a husband, being a father, working, and repaying the victim 3 times. It varies on, but
sure,
you did not get segregated from your family or from society.
Yeah. And
David, man after God's own heart, committed multiple crimes that were worthy of execution.
Yeah.
And Samuel came to him and he confessed, and he still had consequences for his
There's
sin.
always a consequence. Yeah. There's always.
You don't need to impose one. Not for every sin do we need to impose prison time. Consequences are going to exist.
Sure.
Just in God's order of the world. And David suffered consequences, but he didn't have to leave his throne. And he certainly wasn't provided criminal penalties for those crimes that he committed. And then David took that mercy and became a man after God's own heart and changed the world at that time, and ended up grandfather to Jesus himself. So
yeah. It reminds me of kind of what our forefathers said. I don't remember which one it was, or which ones it were. How that goes. But they in talking about the Constitution of the United States, they said this Constitution will only work for a moral people.
You're right.
Because
I think that was Jefferson.
I think it was too, Jefferson. Yeah, and it seems to me like that same philosophy is how ancient Christians and Hebrews, before Christianity,
right,
saw their law system, the structure of their law system, and not building prisons and jails, but insisting that there be a certain morality that we follow. Even when we fall, we follow morality and getting back up. So what's the solution today? I mean, I would love for the solution to be, yes, we become a moral people and we can do away with.
I'm guessing, before you go on, I'm guessing when it comes to the punishments of what you're alluding to, especially when it comes to biblical punishments, because they still received punishment for their crimes, yet there wasn't a prison system. But you've even admitted here that there's some guys in prison that needed to be there because they were a danger to society. So are you saying that back in the day, back in biblical days, those kind of people who committed those kind of crimes would just be executed.
Yes, in the Old Testament, for sure. Now, there was a city of refuge concept that people who killed based on intent, based on mens rea, if it was accidental or negligence, but they didn't have, a criminal mind to murder somebody, that they could flee to a city of refuge, which was the priest controlled, and they wouldn't be executed. So God provided some mercy even then, and he also made sure that
more like exile instead of execution.
Yeah.
Okay.
They were executed. I mean, God didn't allow dangerous people to live in the community and hurt his people. And I don't advocate for that either. I mean, we need prisons.
Yeah.
But we don't need to be the first choice for everybody who disappoints us. Yeah. Which is what we have now, especially, where I went, I was one of 3 white-collar people, and everybody else was drug dealers.
Maximum prison? Was it maximum? No.
It was anything. We didn't even have a fence. You want to talk about a waste of taxpayers' money.
So y'all could have just escaped anytime you wanted to?
Oh, God, I never did this, but guys we were literally next to a neighborhood, and I'd be out running on the track.
This doesn't make sense.
Oh, I got a lot of stories. I'd be running on the track and wave at the neighbors out there grilling burgers on their back. And then,
like in an orange jumpsuit, or
we had gray T-shirt, gray shorts to run in. But
did they wave back?
Oh yeah. But some guys,
I bet their house was so cheap.
Well, if you were of a certain mindset, you could get a real hustle by being close to that prison. Just go out to the back fence and drop bags. And
I had an uncle who lived not far from Huntsville, within view of Huntsville, that would grow 6-foot tall marijuana plants. Because his philosophy was, the closer you are to danger, the further you are from harm.
Interesting philosophy. But there were guys who would leave in the morning and they'd walk through the woods. No fence. They walk through the woods and meet their girl and in the cul-de-sac, and they drive to a hotel, spend the day with her, and then they go to Walmart, get a shopping list for us inmates. We'd give them a list. I need some protein powder. I need some whatever. And they'd come back in and hand out their, we had Tuesdays was Chick-fil-A or Popeyes, actually.
Wow.
Fridays, you could get a $20 pizza. You could, from Domino's, it was.
Wow.
That sounds great.
Well, that's what my wife, I'd call her and she was like, "What'd you do today?" And I was like, "Well, I ran, I worked out. We had a softball game tonight." And she's I am working my ass off.
This doesn't sound like prison.
I know. She's like, "Can we trade places?"
But I think that's the problem that you're probably touching on right now is the reason why the judicial system worked back in the Bible days is because people actually feared the punishment. And now that doesn't sound like something you should fear.
Well, it sucks because you're away from your family and you're still
imagine
very regulated.
A white single guy.
Yeah, I would fear the other inmates more than the probably.
Yeah.
It depends. One night I slept with a lock and a sock, which is your padlock and a sock so you can swing it.
Sure.
And because a guy was drunk. Alcohol was so prevalent in there, and so he was drunk, walking around talking about, "I'm going to blankety blank that senator," blah blah blah. And,
wow! Thank you for blankety blanking it.
Yeah.
I appreciate that because Nick doesn't know how to censor himself.
What are you talking about?
Shut up.
But
go ahead.
By the end of the night, he did that till like 2 a.m. and then he went to bed, and the next morning everything was fine. So I was in a low, minimum security, so that kind of stuff wasn't. I did travel, like transport. I went for a few weeks to Oklahoma City, and I flew Con Air to Atlanta, and there you're all mixed in together, and that was a scary few weeks. But
so Con Air is real?
Yeah,
really.
It's humiliating and demeaning, and
is it?
All of it is. But
I'm drawing a blank on what Con Air is. I know it's a movie.
It was a movie. It's the 747 that they fly prisoners around the country in.
Oh, it's just how they treat you whenever they're
you're
transporting you.
Locked in with the box, and you can't move, and you're They push you're falling down the aisles, and they're pretty.
It's basically the airline service for inmates, right? To call it Con Air.
Yeah, and the plane looks like it's held together with duct tape.
Oh,
I mean,
did you see duct tape? That would have been funny.
I was looking for it.
You see duct tape just flapping off the wing.
But point of all that is that system, the taxpayers are paying, and there were guys. Now, I was desperate to get home because I missed my family and stuff. But there were guys who had no family.
Yeah.
And they had a pretty good life there.
That's what I'm saying.
And they had a hustle. I mean, some guys there would clear 6 figures.
What?
Tax free in prison. And they're like, if the release date's coming up and they
would
don't
do
want to go
something to
home,
stay in.
so they stab somebody to pick up some charges and be able to stay. Not because they were mad at the guy. They didn't want to go home. They had nothing for them.
They were institutionalized.
Yeah, go home. You'll be living under a bridge.
Yeah.
Here I get 3 meals a day. I got a way to, and some of them had families, and they're like, I can't support my family out there.
Wow.
But in here, I can support my family and send money back.
Did you clarify something for me? Because you're talking about a lot of stuff that I've always speculated on, but I never had any kind of inside source. How in the world does someone bring in 6 figures? Where does that money go?
Cash App.
You can have a Cash App when you're in prison?
Well, you're not supposed to, but
so they have phones?
Yeah.
But they don't have them legally?
No.
Okay.
No, but
do they ever get caught? I mean,
you got to be pretty dumb to get caught. But yeah, there's guys who get caught every day. But,
so they have smartphones in prison, and they have a Cash App, and it's probably not under their name.
Yep.
And they pull in 6 figures.
Wow.
They'll be bringing in, some of it's bringing in stuff, or everything has a price. The TV rooms, it's all segregated by race. And I think the system wants that because they want you all fighting each other, not turning your attention toward the guards. And so they encourage it. But they have a black TV, a white TV, a Hispanic TV. And that's where most of the fights occur is
of course
over TV.
Yeah.
And I'd only watch football on Saturdays. It's the only time I ever watch TV. But
Arkansas.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know too.
I'm a Sooner fan.
It's not fun to be a Razorback fan in prison with a bunch of guys who Tennessee and Texas.
Yeah.
Took a lot of abuse. But to have a chair in the TV room, you had to buy it from somebody.
Really?
You weren't allowed to sit out there unless you bought property. I mean, the property rights there were enforceable. They were recognized. This is my spot. I can bequeath it to somebody. If I leave, I can sell it. I can auction it off. We can get a bidding process going.
Wow. And thus all the fighting, I'm sure.
And the channels. I mean, what channel are we going to watch? And
did y'all have access to streaming, or was it just cable?
Just cable, but the guys who had phones had access to, and they would get pirated movies. I talked to my wife, and she's like, me and Kelly, your friend, we're going to go see some movie that's out on theater. And I'm like, oh, I saw it last night.
So you had it, pretty good in prison.
Well,
no, I say that sarcastically.
I mean, it was shocking. What's shocking to me is that these guys are away from their kids, away from their families. Taxpayers are paying for this.
Yeah.
And there's no rehabilitation. I mean, you can if you put it on yourself to rehabilitate.
Right.
But there's no real organized rehabilitation. It's just a complete waste. And then they get out. They have a felon by their name. They can't get a job. The
system's completely rigged against
them. They're going to and that's what Texas has done such a good job of, is they actually help guys get rehabilitation. They help them find jobs. And the recidivism rate for Texas is half of what Arkansas's is.
Wow. Okay.
And the crime rate is half.
No way.
Which is shocking because you all have the border, you've got Houston, you've got a lot of tough dynamics. And yet you have one of the lowest crime rates in the country. And I believe that's because, most crime is committed by people who've already been in prison. and they get out and they have no hope, so they reoffend.
They go back.
If you give that person hope, then they get a job. If you can get a job, you're probably going to stay out of prison unless you're just a real degenerate. But most people go back because they don't have a job. They can't get a job, and then they're desperate, and they got to feed themselves and their family, so they'll go back to selling drugs or breaking in to steal, copper from it or whatever they do to, and or hold the place up. And
wow. So let me ask you this. I heard this just the other day, and the thing about Christianity is that it tends to give you hope, right? It gives someone hope.
Ultimate hope.
Yeah, ultimate hope. But the reason that the Islamic community grows so widely in prison is because they feel like they have no hope. And so did you see a lot of that? I mean, you say you got in touch with your Christian faith in prison. Did you see a lot of Muslims like being born in prison? And
we have a theory. That's why we're asking you.
I think there's some merit to that theory. I think most of it is a sense of belonging and protection. I mean, gangs.
I was going to say like a gang.
And the Muslims are a gang. I mean, they run together.
That'll be clipped. That'll be clipped.
Will it?
Muslims are, it's going to be clipped.
In prison, they're a gang. And they run together. They protect each other. And then they get, I mean, this sounds so petty, but it's a big deal in prison. Do you get special food during Ramadan? And you get a special menu.
Are you freaking kidding me?
So
Muslims get a special menu in prison?
During Ramadan, they do.
Do Christians get a special menu?
No. I mean, Easter, everybody gets a little extra piece of ham, but that's for everybody.
Well,
and then
ham,
what's fun?
Except the Muslims.
No, they eat. I mean,
no, they eat.
They don't. They're not. There's nothing. You never see them praying. You never see them.
So they're Muslim by name only.
Yeah, there may be some, but I never saw anybody pull out a prayer rug but they'd call them. They may wear the little cap or whatever. Yeah. Some of them do, but they'd call themselves Muslims and they'd say, "Thank you, Allah," and they'd reference Allah all the time, but they never actually were practicing. But they'd come Ramadan, they'd want their special meals.
Wow.
But they'd never not eat pork.
Yeah. We have another guest on. He battles Islam online and loves the Lord. He knows exactly what Islam is. And he said the reason why there's an uptick of inmates coming to the Islam faith is because it allows them to keep being what they are.
Absolutely.
So it affirms what they're doing wrong, so they can do this or do that because Islam allows it.
Well, I mean, that's I think that's absolutely right. And but that brings up a point that Christianity, I mean, we're a bunch of rules and regulations in their mind. And the only thing that's attractive about Christianity is the unending, irresistible love of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
As displayed through us, his followers. Well, if you look at our world, and you look at least historically, I think the church is changing. But for from the 60s through the 90s, it was Christians who were the harshest on especially prisoners.
Yeah.
And would lock them up. Let's just throw the book at them. And you drug dealers, how can you not get your life together? What's wrong with you? We're going to lock you up for 10 years. Well, it's no wonder that the Christian faith and the church has waned in influence. If we're not displaying that irresistible love of Jesus Christ, who would want to be a Christian? I mean, it sucks without that. It's just a bunch of extra rules and guidelines. And so I think for the church to flourish and Jesus, if you look at it, he built his entire church off of criminals.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he could have used lawyers. He could have used rich and powerful. Instead, he used a bunch of Bartholomew, Zacchaeus, Paul was a conspirator to genocide. I mean, he was, and you go through Matthew. I mean, you go through them all. all, Pete, I mean, eventually all of them, because they all
Yeah.
were, I mean, for professing Christ, that they all were, eventually died as criminals. Jesus technically was a criminal. But that's who he chose to build his church off. The woman at the well, he said, "Ye without sin cast the first stone." She committed a crime.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't say, "Okay, go serve your sentence and then come follow me." He said, "You without sin cast the first stone." Then he said, "Go sin no more and follow me." And that irresistible grace, she dropped everything.
Yeah.
And I think we've lost that. And that's why Muslims are gaining in popularity, because there's no sacrifice. It's a fairly easy way to belong to a religion and have that kind of inner, something higher than me. And Christianity, which is only attractive through the love of Jesus, we haven't displayed very well.
That's a good take.
Yeah.
I will say this. I think the difference between surrendering to Jesus and converting to Islam is that there is a noticeable difference in a person whenever they surrender to Jesus compared to whenever they surrender to Islam.
Sure.
Like we just recently visited a mosque for a mayoral candidate forum. There's 4 candidates running for Frisco mayor. 3 of them went to the mosque. 1 of them went to a Christian church for their mayoral candidate forum, and we decided to cover the mosque. And I grew up a minister. I was a worship leader for 16 years. And when I walked into that mosque, for one, I didn't like it. And 2, it looked very familiar. Like it had a foyer. I had kids playing in the background. They were all, the wives were covered and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But you walk into the sanctuary and there was chairs, there was a stage, there was a sound system. Like it all looked very familiar. But it all felt very counterfeit. You know what I mean? Like I can recall whenever I walk into places and I can actually, I can recognize when the Holy Spirit's working in a place. When I walked in that place, it just felt fake. And so,
well, I tell you, I obviously agree. I haven't been to mosques, so I can't.
I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't recommend it at all.
But
because I had demonic attacks after that, and I had to rebuke it in the name of Jesus. But
I'll say this: the place that I've felt the Holy Spirit the most was in the prison chapel, and it was actually the prisons I was at. The chapels weren't the chaplain. Well, one was a good chaplain, but I wasn't there very long. But the first place, the chaplain just didn't care. He wouldn't even open up on Sundays, and if he did, we were preaching because he didn't even want to take the time to develop a sermon. But when I got out, I've gone back to state prisons in Arkansas, and I begin, they don't know who I am, and I walk up, and there's like 300, and they've got a band, and the inmates are beautiful worship music, incredibly talented musicians, and then I get up, and I begin, guys, I'm Jeremy Hutchinson, inmate 321-61009, and 6 months ago, I was where you are. And they, welcome home, brother. I'm like, well, I'm not home. But
this is not home.
But I told them, I said, the only thing I miss about prison is this. When there were 300 guys all struggling with the very difficult circumstances, but bonding arms together and praising God in the midst of adversity and leaning on each other and needing each other because it's tough. And boy, the Holy Spirit it's like, I encourage everybody, go to a prison chapel sometime. You'll find, and it was interesting too. I'd go to Chow, and the first place, especially, there's like seven of us who would go to the actual chapel. There are a lot more Christians, but they didn't want to go deal with that chaplain, so they'd skip. 7 of us to go to chapel, but I look around the Chow hall, and half of the inmates would bow their heads and pray before they dug into food.
Love it.
And I was like, in the real world, you may see 2% do that.
I make us do it every time.
Yep.
Like even it doesn't care. I don't care who's with us. Like,
well, I think that's awesome, but you don't see that even among churchgoers, and especially out in public. And I started thinking, why here, where there's half of them will publicly, which is a kind of sign of a weakness, but they do it. And I think it's because a prison is fertile ground because there's no pretense. You are fallen. You are in desperate need of a Savior and of help and strength. And it's an amazing environment and a very fertile ground for. I think that's why God chose. And he talks about prisoners every time he mentions widows. He mentions prisoners, and I think it's because he knows these guys are not easy, but they're fertile.
Yeah,
they know they need a savior. They know
they're receptive.
Yeah, that's the right word.
Yeah, and so because it's easy to be receptive when you are at rock bottom.
Yeah,
and I mean, I wanted to make it when it comes to trials that I go through, I wanted to make it an easy thing for myself whenever I go through trials that I wanted to, like, Jesus is who I run to. Because when it gets, I've seen so many people in the past when they get down to rock bottom, they don't want to run to Jesus. They want to question Jesus. And so at an early age, I saw that and I wanted to create a habit to where, I'm putting the trust there. My problem is when things get good, I don't have a habit of thanking him for everything going good. Like that's where I missed the mark. You know what I mean?
Well, I've struggled since my pardon. I get out and I'm like, I got to restart my life. I've got to find a retirement for me and my wife who was depleted. I got all these things I got to do now. I want to make a difference in criminal justice reform. I got people I want to help. All these things I want to do, and they're all good things. But it's been tough to remain that dependent, just desperate for God like I was when I was in prison. And I've warned some guys who I still talk to that when you get out, be on the alert because it's far more difficult out here to keep your relationship as strong as it was. When I got pardoned, this is prison. And guys, they were all happy for not all, but all my buddies were very happy.
Sure.
But they were also a little bitter. I mean, you can't help it.
Yeah.
You're like,
why him?
home.
Why not me? Yeah.
And they have a point. I mean, why me? I had kind of survivor's guilt. I was whispering, I got a pardon because I was embarrassed. I mean, because they were as deserving, if not more, or some of them. But despite that underlying bitterness, they took me out to the softball field and 30 guys laid their hands on me and prayed for me as I was leaving.
This is in prison.
Prison.
This is in prison. Like, this is what you should be seeing at your local church, but this is in prison. That's
an
awesome,
amazing,
dude.
And yet, when people think of, not everybody, but a lot of people think of prisoners, they're just repulsed by it and think they're evil. They're hopeless, and I don't want to even get close to them. I want to cross the sidewalk when I see.
Yeah.
Or if out working, and like we went out and worked out in the community every day, weed eating, and people literally, like I was on this golf course one time mowing and on a Navy base, and there's these ladies playing golf, and I'm mowing, and they're walking off, and they wave at me. So I wave back, and then I get closer, and they see my yellow prison uniform, and you would have thought a coyote was coming. They turned and I tailed it so far away from me. And anyways, I wish people could see what I experienced, because while there are some really bad guys, there are some of the best men I've ever met in my life. I met in prison, and I'll be friends with them.
Sounds like
for the rest of my life.
A spiritual experience.
It's extremely. I mean, there's bad too. I mean, there's evil that lurks around every corner. There's stuff that's I never thought I'd ever see in my life that I witnessed. Yeah. But there is also a very devout, just incredibly spiritual, and it's because they're desperate and they recognize it, unlike the rest of us.
Well, this came after being a senator, an Arkansas senator, right? And so how many years were you an Arkansas senator? And the reason I'm asking is because I want to know if there's parallels. Like, in your mind, did you see parallels between serving your state in that capacity and being a prisoner of your state in that capacity? And I mean,
no. I'll tell you a quick story. One of my jobs, I asked for it, was doing laundry, and it was a little metal tin building that had 2 washing machines and 2 industrial dryers, and there was no air conditioning.
Oh, so it was hot.
There's no heat during the winter. It was freezing. During the summer, it was scorching hot. But there's a bathroom that was all mine, and I had a little radio that's like built in 1970. I mean, it was one of those old brown. I don't know if
Oh, yeah.
And but I could listen to talk radio, and I had some weights out there that I had smuggled over, and I could, in between loads, I could do some lifts, and I could listen to talk radio, and I could go to the bathroom by myself in peace, and so I took the job. But guys were kind of surprised because that's not a job that a lot of people want, and I asked for it and fought for it. And they're like, you're doing laundry? And I said, yeah, I've gone from making laws to washing drawers. And it was extremely humbling. But it was good for me. And I was riding pretty high. I'd been in, to answer your question, 15 years and was chairman of Judiciary Committee, and I was good at it. I mean, I some people would disagree, but I never lost an election. My constituents thought I was good at it, and I enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed the debate and the relationships, and but I was feeling pretty full of myself, and God gave me chances throughout. I got a divorce back in 2011 that was primarily my fault, and he gave me chances, and I just kept, I'm okay, God, I'm okay. I wasn't, I didn't turn away from the faith or anything, but I just wasn't. And,
you weren't being fully repentant of certain things.
I mean, I struggle with guilt. There's a lot of complicating, but I did repent, but then I wouldn't really change my behavior that much. I still kind of, I got this. I really screwed up there, God, and forgive me. But then I just kind of keep going down the same path. And he gave me chance after chance. Then he's like, all right, you're not paying attention. And slapped me upside the head. But then he was there. And I don't know how much, but I got to prison. I'd been praying for this. This whole thing took like years from the time that I was investigated till the time I was indicted. Then another 5 years before I was sentenced, and because COVID hit, and I was just languishing. Please sentence me. Let me get this over with. And that was a tougher period than prison. But I was praying, God, please rescue me. You know, blah, blah, blah. And I told my wife, I don't know what else I'm supposed to learn. I mean, I think I've learned everything you could. What else does he have to teach me? Why do I have to keep going through this? And then I get to prison, and I really had a crisis of faith, I guess. I mean, I was like, where are you, God? I mean,
there it is.
Come on.
Yeah.
You got to show yourself. What is, and I'd file an appeal, and it was denied. And I thought for sure I could win it. I filed this 2255, and it just languished there for a year. And I'm like, wow. God, and I started, do you exist? I mean, is this all just some feel-good exercise to make us live a better life? But so I came down at the resurrection. If that's legit, then it's all true. Yeah. If it's not legit, then it's all just a good fairy tale that makes us, aim high for. And so I started really thinking about the resurrection. And I got Josh McDowell's book sent into me, and it all, but what finally convinced me was watching Prisoners, and they would rat each other out for anything. I mean, you give them a honey bun, I'll go rat somebody out. You get up in higher security, you get killed for that kind of thing. But at minimum, they were just like, and so I'm like, what convinced me of the resurrection was human nature, because I saw it, and we're all selfish, and we're all going to take care of ourselves. And those disciples and the other people who are witnesses to the resurrection, I mean, all they had to do to save themselves was say, it was John. John stole the body. I confess, he's dead, and John stole the body. Yeah. And they would have been fine. And instead, they all were executed, some of them brutally, upside down. And I'm like, nobody would go through that for a lie.
Exactly. That's a great point.
I'm like, I've seen human nature. Anybody's really rat out anybody else for anything. And those guys nobody would act like that over a lie. And so that gave me faith, and I began to really study more. And I was like, all right, God is real, and I better use this time. And I started researching criminal justice, and then I never thought I'd get a pardon. I mean, I knew my dad was working on it, but we didn't hire anybody. We didn't contribute to Trump. We didn't do anything. Now, we had some friends in D.C. who helped get it. Hey, take a look at this one. But I was like, there's no way. And I was serving with guys who were like, I paid $1 million to hire Trump's old attorney, and I'm going to be out of here soon. And they're still there.
Wow.
But when that pardon came through, I was like, God, if I had gotten that appeal, I'd still be there. They'd have to reschedule it, resentencing. I'd still be fighting this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You said no to that appeal.
Because the pardon was coming.
For that reason.
But you knew that this is far better.
Yeah.
And I was like, thank you, God, for not granting my wishes. And it was
He had a different plan.
a much better plan than I could have ever imagined. And thank God he ignored me.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going through something similar to that, but it's not near on that like the spectrum, I guess you can call it. It's not near on that spectrum.
You're not in prison.
Yeah, no. Mine was very, very just like finances. You're gonna laugh at this because I'm not making a comparison. Just for the audience, I'm not making a comparison. This is I'm just saying. Last month, because most of the podcast's income is through ad revenue via the. We have 3 TikTok accounts and then 1 Facebook account that's making money. And the one TikTok account that was making the most money, I think around the 24th of last month, they just flicked a switch and disqualified us from the Creator Reward Program. And that $1,700 that I had made, because he wasn't making any videos.
Wasn't my money. I didn't even want any of it.
Which that $1,700 is rent.
Yeah.
Like that, I worked hard for that money, but they flicked the switch and just like disqualified us, didn't get the money.
Which they do tend to do from time to time.
Yeah.
Especially
You don't
based on your content. Yeah.
Exactly. And so, I switched to our other 2 accounts. One of our other accounts came open to where it was on an account ban warning. So I tend to not post on those accounts. That way it kind of, because all the strikes you get fall off after 90 days. So I was waiting for that to fall off. So as soon as that happened, a few days later, we started posting on that other account. And then I noticed that the account ban warning went away. And so I was like, oh, so we can start posting on this one again. So I picked it up on that one. And then I was told by TikTok, the support system, that it's only a disqualification for 30 days. So the 24th of this month is whenever I could reapply. Well, the 24th came around and the button wasn't there. And I was like, what the crap? So talk to support. They're like, it'll be available on the 25th at midnight. Well, 25th at midnight came and went and the button wasn't there. So instead of going to their support chat system, I decided to submit a ticket because it seems like those people have more access. Well, I submitted a ticket. A day later, I get a response back saying, we've reinstated you. And then what they didn't tell me is they backdated it. So not only did I make money from all the passive views that we were getting strictly from the entire month that I wasn't posting on that account, but that $1,700 I'd lost is now there again.
Wow.
Like, and I know that's so small compared to what you're talking about.
No, it's not.
But it just goes to show that sometimes God has he has a different plan than what we're thinking about.
Absolutely. And that's why he's God and we're not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's
why I feel such like an imposter telling this story. You know what I mean? Like, it's compared to what you were going through. I'm like, I'm such an
that's
idiot.
why I go back to the election of 2020, which was completely, well, I'm not going to get all into that, but Trump lost for a reason, I think.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
And
I would agree with that.
And then 2024, the reason sort of became a little more.
Well, and think about, I mean, this is God didn't orchestrate this whole plan on my behalf, but if he had won in 2020, I probably wouldn't have gotten pardoned.
Yeah, that's about to say.
I'd still be there.
You'd still be there.
And,
for sure.
Well, hang on. Would you have even gone in the first place?
I don't know. I mean,
we could speculate that all day.
I don't know.
Because if Trump was the president.
It's tough to say. The prosecutors did. I mean, I don't know. One prosecutor in particular really had it out for me. And I don't think it was political. I think it may have started out. Then she really took a disliking to him.
Oh, is it she?
Yeah.
That makes sense. There it goes. Makes sense.
But what's interesting, this is kind of a side note, but I was in prison during the 2024 election, and I was 85% African American in there with me, and they didn't care about politics. They didn't care about news. They didn't. And I can't say I blame them. I mean, why care about something that you'll never have any input? You can never vote. You can never. But they love Donald Trump.
Really?
In the real world, Republican may get 8% of the African American vote if you're performing well. In prison, at least Trump, and that's not true of all Republicans, but they loved him. I mean,
wow.
Anytime he'd come on, they'd be, shut up, man. Trump's on. And
I love it.
When he got shot, it was like, I mean, guys, just please survive. They watched the presidential debates.
No way.
On election night, it was a party. I mean, and
oh, wow.
I asked some of them, I was like, why? I mean, I love Trump, but that makes sense for me. Like, why do you like Trump? And he's like, because he's one of us. He gets it. He's been through the judicial system. He knows how effed up it is, and he knows what.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad we got somebody who's going to actually know what we've had to go through. And what we. I was like, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And
wow.
It was a really strange dynamic to be having election night in prison with 85% African American dudes.
Yeah.
And they were celebrating.
I love so much that you told that statistic. Yeah. Like, I am so glad. That is going to be
There was only one
like nobody's business
of them who was not for Trump.
Out of the 85% African American, there's only one of them that wasn't for Trump.
Yeah, it makes.
And he's running against Kamala, who's
Yeah.
That's so good.
And then that trans commercial that he ran, I don't know if y'all remember it. He said, Kamala is for they, them. I'm for you. Remember that commercial that he ran?
I don't remember that, but that sounds like Trump.
It was a good commercial. And, man, those guys.
Gosh, I love that. Did you have a question?
That's awesome. Like I was just going to say, I was going to make the point. There was a study done where they, I don't know all of the levers and the strings that they pulled and tied, but it was a psychological study that compared what we know of as the black community in America and their values and where they come from and the presidents of the past, and they're remarkably Republican. Like they're very, very Republican. They're, especially in the last two generations of blacks, where 2 generations ago where they were family oriented and they were one of the largest Christian societies in America. It's remarkably Republican.
Well, historically, yeah. I mean, Republicans have been the ones against slavery, been the ones who pushed the civil rights reform. It's interesting, and this goes back to a crime, but what changed that? I mean, there's probably a lot of smaller things, but I think the biggest driver was Richard Nixon, and the South was Democrat, white Democrat, and he had to win the South to have a chance to win the election. And they had lost, they were still racist, but they had lost civil rights. I mean, this was 68. Yeah, 68 he was running. And they had been losing the civil rights battle. The whites had Southern Democrat whites. And Nixon was, I like a lot of things about Nixon, but he was a street fighter politically. And he's like, I got to win these Southern Democrats. And so he proposed a war on crime and promised new prisons, and we're going to really lock up these guys. And the white Democrats, first time, voted for Republican and they're quite Christian Democrats, but because they saw it as a backdoor way to still impose civil rights. Like, we're going to do a lot of drug laws, and we're going to get those blacks out of our community one way or the other, and we're going to.
Wow.
And that's how the South began to, and that's why the blacks began to vote Democrat, because those white Democrats had embraced a Republican in Richard Nixon, because he was, unfortunately, and he would probably deny it, but there's people who on the campaigns who say, this was a strategy. He appealed to the Democrat racist. And so it was really the crime policy that lost and there's other things, but primarily the crime policy lost the blacks. The Republicans cost them the blacks.
Yeah. So I've heard of similar stories to that. In fact, one of those stories that I heard was around, I guess it was Nixon who wanted to do the kick off a welfare society, basically. And the white supremacists of the time, who are not an element today at all, but back then with the Ku Klux Klan, the 50s, the 60s, early 70s, they were a bit more influential.
They were a real thing back then, yeah.
Yeah, they were a real thing back then. They didn't like that, I guess it was Nixon who was going to service the black community with welfare. So they started abandoning the Democrat Party.
Well, it was LBJ who started it.
Was it LBJ?
And that's why they started banning he was a Democrat, and they started banning the Democrat Party because it was primarily going to poor African Americans.
There you go, which is why.
And then Nixon came in and kind of parlayed that into, I'm not only going to oppose welfare, which there's good economic reasons to do that, but because I'm also going to build a lot of prisons, and we're going to really, and that was like, all right, all these white Democrats then switched over and started becoming Republicans.
Which is why the Republican Party is known, at least by the left, as the party of racism.
Right.
When
but they were all white. They were all white Democrats.
Yeah.
Came over.
They were Ku Klux Klan members, and they were John Crow Law supporters. And
it's I'll say this, President.
That'll be censored.
President
Ku Klux Klan. That's going to be censored. Go ahead.
Feel free to censor anything I say. You aren't hurt my feelings. President Trump in 2018 passed the First Step Act, which doesn't get a lot of attention, but it was the first significant criminal justice reform ever passed in D.C. in Congress. Texas has done a lot of it, starting with Governor Perry, but at the federal level, nobody had done it. All they'd ever done was increase penalties, increase number of crimes. And the First Step Act was allowing people to incentivize as an inmate. You go to class, you begin to prepare for release, you do all the right things, we will start cutting time off of your sentence and it's been incredibly successful. I mean,
I'd say that sounds really good. For the inmates.
It is. But it's also, the recidivism rate for people who are taking First Step Act classes and doing
probably zero.
Well, it's like 3%, which is, and it's 50% for those who don't. And it's a great success story. But African Americans love it. And so I think if we want to, not only is it, I think as Christians to spread the gospel, we need to be more understanding and sympathetic and more helpful in rehabilitation, not just punish. Politically, I think it makes sense and Texas is a
great example.
Yeah. And Oklahoma now is following suit of Texas, another hard Republican state.
Yeah. What is it, Nick? Go ahead, say it. Very proud of this fact, aren't you?
Oklahoma is the only red state, completely red state. Every
really?
county voted red.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's not true.
So when everyone, all the Democrats were like, there is no completely red state, and Oklahoma said, hold my beer.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's what you're doing now, right? You sit on the board of a group that.
I'm not on the board. I'm an employee. I work for a group, Unify US, and they're all conservatives, and have been at different places, and including one at the Department of Justice. And we work a lot of issues, but primarily criminal justice reform. And it gives me, first, I like the guys, which is important first, I'm grateful I could get a job. I haven't got my law license back yet. I'm trying to, but a lot of guys can't get a job when they get out.
I love talking to guys who answers my questions before I even ask them. Like, that's why when you just let people talk. That was one of my questions. Like, are you still a lawyer?
Not yet. I'm trying to, but I'm grateful for the job. But then I got offered a couple of other jobs, and one, they're friends of mine, but when I was in prison, they started a marijuana company, like legal, the state programs in Arkansas. And they came, and right after I got out, and we had lunch, and they're like, "Do you need a job? We'll give you a job." And I was like, "I need a job," but I was like, I don't think God allowed me to go through this so that I could get out some
marijuana job.
So
even though it's legal now. Yeah.
I know. Well, yeah.
It still feels a little off.
Yeah, but I waited a couple more months, and then I landed this job, and it gives me a great platform to go around and I promised the guys I left behind I wouldn't forget them, and this allows me to fulfill that promise.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I'm very blessed and grateful.
Yeah. So have you reached out to Trump in any way? Say, hey man, thanks for the golden ticket.
I sent him a letter. He sent a letter back. I'm sure
it was automated.
Yeah. But
I got reposted by Trump one time.
Did you really?
Yeah. I'm going to say this because I'm fully into the social media world. He didn't repost it. Somebody else.
He does a lot of his
he didn't.
Social media.
Because you would have to have ripped that, like you would have to have downloaded that video from TikTok to repost it to True Social. So like he doesn't have time to do that. Like I'm just saying he's got a team working his social media.
He probably does, but he does a lot himself. But
I can't brag though.
That's impressive. I sent him a letter. I'd love to be able to. I've thanked him publicly in interviews and whatnot, but
sure.
I'd love to be able to see him and thank him. And what's so great about him, most presidents, virtually all presidents since Harry Truman, if they issue pardons, and most of them issue very few, but if they do, they wait till the very end of their term.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then when there's no political capital that they have to expend, and then they'll do something. Trump is courageous enough. I mean, he was issuing pardons on day one, and
love our president.
Man. And
I love it because he just doesn't freaking care about the political party.
He took a lot of flack.
He does it.
He's like, and if it had been any other president, even if I got a pardon, it would have been in 2028, or 29 probably. January 29th. And so, again, the providence of God, I mean, that, I'm not the reason that God allowed Trump to be elected, but he sure saved me with that.
Well, it's his integral plan that you just, like,
I've
those
got a
little
small
things.
woven part in that plan that but yeah, I'm grateful that, I mean, as much as I love Marco Rubio, and I think if he was president, I don't think he'd be issuing pardons right now.
Yeah,
probably not. I'm a big fan of Marco Rubio.
I love him.
Yeah.
I actually supported Marco Rubio against Donald Trump in 2016.
I did too. I voted for Rubio.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that about you, traitor.
Seen the like now, but
I'll vote for him next time.
But I just think Donald Trump, he's the only person who would have had the guts.
It's because he's not a politician.
He's not.
And I think that's one of the best things about him, because if we had a politician, they would think in those kind of terms. But having a businessman, because I don't know if anybody wants to even acknowledge this, we're no longer like a country, we're a business. Like, didn't we go incorporated? Yeah, and a lot of people don't know that.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, like we went incorporated a while back, and so having a businessman running, the business that is the U.S., that's one of the best moves we could have made.
Well, I mean, his foreign policy is run like a businessman, and I mean, oil and manufacturing and everything he's doing is.
I'm a little pissed off at the oil prices right now, but
Yeah, but I think, I mean, who knows? Only God knows the future, but. That Iran thing could completely invert the oil trafficking, and we could now be selling oil to Indonesia because they're not going to Iran anymore. And so we'll see. I mean, who knows how the future, it could be disastrous.
I drive a hybrid, so I'm really not that worried about it. Like I have an Avalon hybrid, which gets like 500 miles to the tank. So I'm not that worried about it, but I'm like, I hate seeing 360 a gallon.
I drive a Dodge Ram.
Hemi V8.
So I need the gas prices to go down.
The truck that you saw us pull up in, that's a V8. Like I have my work truck, but that's not truck. I only started driving that today because whenever I left my apartment, it was pelting rain outside, and then I thought I heard hail hit my car, and I'm like, let's whip this around and get in the truck.
They said hail was coming.
Yeah. So I didn't want to do that. I want to ask you some questions about being a lawyer, because I almost went to law school, and there's a couple things that my business and public law professor at DBU said that really caught my eye to make me want to really be a lawyer. One of them was it counts as a doctorate. And
it is a doctorate.
Exactly. Right. But
nobody
you don't have
respects us for that. But
so it shows as a doctorate, but you don't have to have a master's.
Correct.
So you can go straight from bachelor's to a law degree and you have a doctorate, which I was like, okay, sign me up. But then the next thing she said was like what really convinced me. She's like, Nick, a law degree was the easiest degree that I've ever gotten. I'm like, okay, keep talking. And then she said, because it's all common sense.
Well, I would say this. First of all, a quick story about the doctor thing. I went back to class reunion, and my twin brother is a lawyer too, and we obviously graduated in the same class.
My gosh, you guys could have really gotten away with stuff being identical twins. Come on.
We played a few games, but nothing too bad. But they do this, who has the most kids, who they actually ask who's been to prison. At that time I hadn't. But then they ask who's got the highest education. And people were, and Tim and I were like, we're lawyers. And like, oh, that's amazing. Great. And then this guy raised his hand and goes, I got a master's degree in education. And they're like, oh, you win. Come on up here. Juris Doctorate.
Wait. Yeah.
But so law school, I think it's the best education you can get.
Okay. All right.
Because that doesn't mean you should practice law. That's a totally different question. But
it teaches you a lot.
It teaches your mind to think in a way that no other type of education. It's a very Socratic method. It's great. And I would say the first year, at least for me, maybe
I never went, but I wanted
for
to.
me, the first year was very challenging. Now I did the best of all my 3 years. First year I got the best grades, despite it being the hardest year, because A, you're learning a new way of thinking and B, they try to kick you out. I mean, they try to weed out
the bad apples or
first
just
year.
The weak people.
Right. And so they make it intentionally tough. If you get past your first year, you're like, I'm going to survive this. You still have to work, but it's not nearly as intense as. So the last 2 years, I may agree with that it was pretty easy.
Okay.
Now, studying for the bar exam was the toughest thing I've done until prison came along. That was a very difficult. But again, you don't have to take the bar. I mean, get a degree and just learn that skill set, and then go off into business or ministry or whatever. It'll benefit you wherever you go.
No, I almost went into law school, and I was so excited about it. I was the kind of excited that I called Dad and Mom's like, I'm going to be a lawyer. And I don't call Dad and Mom and tell them that kind of thing unless I had made a decision. Yeah. And of course, they were both ecstatic, my son's going to be a lawyer. And then I saw how much law school costs, and I'm like, maybe not. So
yeah, go be an actor.
Yeah, I became an actor.
Yeah,
and then later became a podcaster, and which we have a purpose for the podcast, and it's definitely fulfilling its purpose. But we're actually at heart filmmakers, so he's the writer, I'm the producer.
I knew that. I've watched y'all's episodes, and I think, quite frankly, what you're doing now is making a far greater difference than if you become a lawyer.
And it's one of those things where it wasn't the intention, but this is how God's orchestrated it.
Yeah, it's been a very organic direction that it just grew on its own and took us in this direction.
It grew on its own. Isn't that cute? Like, you think it grew its own. Yeah.
That's how God usually works.
Let's not forget about all the posting that I do every day.
I don't mean it grew on its own. I don't want to undermine all the
hard work,
laborious effort and hard work you put into it. I'm talking about the direction that it took. It just kind of took its own direction.
Yeah. Let me correct myself. I feel I'm being very prideful right now. God did orchestrate that growth, because I could post to the nines, but if it didn't have His hand on it, then it wouldn't have gone anywhere. So I'll agree with you, Nick.
Well, and that's, I think God, He certainly, I think what I'm doing now, I look back 15 years in the legislature, and there's a lot of things I'm proud of, a lot of things I did to help people. As a lawyer, I had clients that I helped. I helped with adoptions, and I mean, I feel really good about a lot of stuff I did as a lawyer. But what I'm doing now, I think is far more impactful than anything I did as a lawyer or as a legislator. And so, you know, you have plans, and God says, I got something better for you.
Story of my life. Yeah, story of my life.
I told my son, who was just an incredible trumpet player through high school, he never lost the competition that he went to. He was first place all the way through, won first place in state, got a scholarship to go play in college, and is now in the Navy band. But I remember there was a time where he said he was getting tired of it, and the whole family was against him quitting. Don't quit. It's your bread and butter. It's your passion. Blah blah blah. And I remember telling him, son, if you put the trumpet down and never pick it back up, it was good enough to get you this far. And so I had a point to that, but I forgot what it was. but yeah, it's the plan. We are not in charge of our own plan. No. We are a part of a much bigger plan. And so you have to do, my point to my son was, you have to do what's right for you right now. And always know that that's the decision you made. Even if you live to regret it later on, in this moment now, you did what you knew in your heart was right for you. And I think that's how you just follow God's plan.
Yeah. I mean, I think people, myself included, have these, I wanted to be attorney general, and I wanted to, and left to my own devices, I probably would have continued to pursue that path. And God, like I said, tried to get my attention many times, and probably had an alternative plan for me. And I ignored him. I was like, no, this is good. This is what. Yeah. And he's got a way to say, I'll get you in the right direction.
Yeah, dude, whenever God wants to either put an obstacle in front of you, there's no one else that's going to be able to do it so strategically and so big. He's going to do it in the biggest way. That's going to be not just so it's going to reach you, but he's going to use that through you to reach others.
Absolutely.
And then you come to this realization that God doesn't need you.
No.
Have you heard the stories about Muslims in Muslim countries coming to know Jesus because they're having dreams about the man in white?
I have heard that.
And then they would put up signs like, if you've had dreams about the man in white, come talk to me, or something like that. And that, people are coming to know Jesus in these Muslim countries.
No missionaries.
No missionaries at all. Yeah. And so I'm just thankful that he sees me enough to where I can be used for his glory. It's
a privilege.
It's definitely a privilege.
He doesn't need us. So the fact that he's willing to use us is a gift.
Yeah. And loves us. Yeah. Sent his son to die for us, which I think about that all the time. And I don't want to ever make it to where it's a cliche thing or a cheesy thing. But, I just prayed this the other day. I was like, I want to always be enthralled with his glory, in his will and everything he's done for us. Because when we are doing what we're doing, and we're uncovering the Islamic takeover, we're uncovering the H-1B visa fraud and all this stuff that's going against Texans and Americans right now, we always have to remember that, Christ died for them as well.
Yeah.
It's up to them to choose, which if you're a Calvinist, you don't believe in that kind of thing. But still, they, per the scriptures, they have this free will of choice. And if they're presented with the gospel.
My grandpa, who was a Calvinist,
very special breed,
but he's had like a 6th grade education, but the most godly man I've ever met. And he had just rows and rows and rows of Bible commentaries and theologians and Charles Spurgeon, and just would read, deep, difficult reading material, and he just digested. He's incredible. But the most amazing thing is his prayers. And I actually, before he passed, I was like, Papa, I want you to say a prayer for me. And I was going through all my valley of lament, I call it. And I recorded his prayer. And because his prayers but he would challenge me and my brothers, and he'd say, he'd weep every time he prayed.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I was like, wow. I was little and just say whatever was on my mind. I was like, Papa, why do you cry when you pray? And he said, boys, when I pray, I see the cross. And he goes, you got to see the cross. I can't imitate him because his voice was very powerful and was, but we'd say he'd talk through tears. But you got to see the cross.
Yeah.
See the cross. And you can't help but cry when you see the cross.
Man, that's great.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was like, I wish I could see the cross like he did.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
I think what's amazing is that we see an empty cross and we see an empty grave. We see an empty tomb, which, man, if I overthink it, then I'm going to get emotional. But I want to bring it back to what we're talking about. And I want to go ahead because we're running out of time. So I want to go ahead and ask our 3 litmus test questions. This is to determine if you're liberal or conservative.
Most important questions you'll ever answer in your life.
Are these trick questions or?
No, they're not.
You wouldn't think so.
To liberals, they think they are.
Nowadays, they kind of are.
We've actually had one liberal on the show. He's coming back to do a debate with another guy.
My brother actually watched that.
The woke pastor?
Yeah,
that was fun. So he's the only one that didn't answer these questions
correctly.
Well, I mean, he answered one correctly. But the other one
as a fluke, I think, but
it may have been. Anyway, so when does life start?
Conception.
See, I love when conservatives are on because they answer them so quickly with the right answer.
One word, man.
How many genders are there?
2.
Yeah, all right. Yeah.
These are hard.
Moving right along. And the last question, this is a hard one. What is a woman?
Well, it's an easy question. I'm trying to get it biologically correct. It's one of the genders that has a womb and is able to reproduce. Uterus, and there's
XX chromosome.
Yeah.
We've had all these that's the only question where people answer right, but they give different answers. Yeah. And so the last
variations of the same answer.
Yeah.
But
the last guest we had on, she was
it's easier to tell you what's not a woman.
Yeah. She was on and she said something like, you will never be understand what a woman is. Like whenever she's talking about the liberals.
Well, she went on this sort of diatribe.
She's right. I'll never understand a woman.
You won't. Yeah.
That's what struck me was that's what she said. That's something you will never understand if you're not a woman.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow.
Yeah. And she was super young. She was like 27. She was wearing a Live Like Charlie hat.
I saw her. I saw that episode y'all did.
Super sweet. But we had her on because she had a ranch in Salina, Texas, and she's had a few experiences with the growing Indian population. And we
y'all
wanted
ought
to have
look in Little Rock.
Is there a growing Indian population?
No, Muslim.
Muslim, okay.
I don't know if it's growing, but they have, and I'm not. You get some conflicting stories, but one of the reports is that they bought a tract of land and are building single family homes on it, and they're building.
That's Epic City.
I will need to. Yeah, that's basically an Epic City.
But they also have a ordinance that you have to sign if you live there that you'll abide by Sharia law.
Oh my God!
What? It's an actual ordinance?
Well. I don't know if that part's true. That's what I'm saying. You hear all these, and some of it.
Can you send me information on that?
I'll send you a link on it.
Okay.
And again, there's been some people say, no, that's not true. Some people do. So I don't know but it's sure an uproar in Little Rock.
Oh, I can imagine,
bro. Yeah. That was it. Okay. So I was sent something by someone. They said, I bet you'll get a kick out of this. I want to read this. This will be our ending thing. And it says, I was sent this, thought you would get a kick out of it. And it says, Dear Muslims of the USA, with the big American flag. And it says, my family and I have decided to move to a Muslim country. We haven't picked which one yet. We're still shopping for the best benefits package. Obviously, all my neighbors want to come too, and their neighbors and their mates and their mates' mates. Before you know it, half of the U.S. will be turning up with suitcases and a vague sense of entitlement. As a large Christian community, we'll need a few small adjustments. Please start building churches immediately. Proper ones with bells, loud bells. We'll all need certain streets closed once a year for our processions. Don't worry. it's not 5 times a day. We're not animals. Every supermarket must stock proper pork, bacon, sausage, and baked beans. We are a minority now, so you'll just have to be understanding and accommodating of our way of life. That's one message out of 3 messages they sent me of this rant that this person's going on because they want to like reach. So basically, I want to do a video on that tomorrow. Like,
yeah, you should,
reading
man.
all that off.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So, thank you for coming.
Thank you guys for hosting me, and I appreciate the opportunity to share my testimony and story. And thank you all for the great work you're doing.
You definitely have said stuff that we have never heard.
Yeah,
ever. And so thank you for opening our eyes, and thank you for sharing the experiences you had in prison when it comes to just how the Holy Spirit's working there, because that's encouraging. Not people don't talk about that, if you know what I mean.
I would encourage everybody here, go visit a prison, like not on the outside, go to a prison chapel. And, I think you'll
really see what church is like.
You will. And you'll see what desperate people are worshiping God in ways that I don't think the rest of us can match, because we're not that desperate. And but it's what God, we are that desperate in the eyes of God, and we're all sinners. But we don't feel that way when we're living in luxury and but you go there and you're reminded this is how we should feel, and grateful every day.
I'm reminded of what Paul said when he said, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." But what he listed off before that is, I've been in prison, I've been in good, I've been in want, I've been in every kind of situation you want, but I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And a lot of people don't want to read what's above that scripture. They just want to apply it to their cushy life, or I'm up for another job interview. No, I'm making $300,000 a year. And I can do all things for Christ. Like, no, Paul was in the dirt, bro.
Yeah, you pray God for. I want that $350,000 job. I'm gonna pray for you, which is fine. You should pray about that, but it's not the same degree. Desperation that you're praying when you're locked in a cell and worrying about your safety every day.
Jeremy. Yes. Jeremy, thank you. Thank you for coming. And we're going to plug our sponsors one more time, and then we'll close out in prayer. Patriot Mobile, patriotmobile.com/NRP, or patriotmobile.com with the code NRP. Get a free month. Livv Audio, LIVV Audio. Put in the code NRP for 15% discount, premium headphones. Nick's Right Podcast, merch.com. And you can get the new shirt that we just put out called 100% Not Muslim. And we also have another one coming out called 100% Not Liberal. I think.
Don't we have another one coming out?
We have a lot more coming out. I just haven't hit publish yet.
Okay.
So,
all right.
So I'm just going to plug those real quick. And then we do have some awesome guests coming up that I can't necessarily promote right now, but one of them is we're going to have Mike Pagano back, and also Pastor Chad Presley, who was what we always refer to as the woke pastor. They're actually going to be here to do our first debate episode. And then I'm trying to get another debate episode, where we're going to have Nick Plum on, the guy who uncovered all the H-1B visa fraud, and he's going to be debating an Indian woman who was born in New Jersey, who wants to say that there's no fraud going on. So hopefully she'll agree to it. I actually have to follow with her today. So thank you, Jeremy, for coming on.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate you.
Enjoyed it.
It's going to be fun. We're probably going to have your brother on, Josh. He's ex-FBI. He actually left. Can I say this? Left the FBI because of this. Yeah. So he felt compelled to leave the FBI for reasons he will tell you whenever he's on. I'll let you guys know whenever he's coming on. Probably going to be closer to June. Yeah? June? Okay, cool. Lord Jesus, thank you for this time. Thank you for the ability to speak, the ability to speak freely. And Lord, thank you just for your grace and your mercy and dying on the cross for us. And I ask that no matter what's said here, that you are glorified, that you shine through us, that no one sees us. They only see you and your love shining through. We thank you, and we ask that you will bring a supernatural revival to this land that will be unprecedented, and that the only thing that we can think of is that this is you provoking this revival, that we will come back to our first love as a nation. I ask that in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, guys. We good, mate?